So before discussing about types of parameters, we should know what parameters actually mean. By replacing fixed values with parameters, quick test enables you to enlarge the scope of a basic test. This is called as parametrization. It greatly increases the power and flexibility of a test. A parameter is a variable that is assigned a value from an external data source or generator. So parameters basically lets us check how the application performs the same operation with multiple sets of data. For example, suppose there is a ICICI Bank website for which you have to test the login page by applying different inputs to it. So we can have a multiple set of inputs. Say for example, we have 10 login IDs for which we have to verify whether the user is logged on successfully. So the script works for login page and we have 10 inputs. So these 10 inputs can be passed to the script through parameterization. This is called as parameterization. Suppose we have a variable in the script, we can use parameterization to supply different values to the same user operation. So these are the different ways in which we can pass the values. Environment variable parameters, this I've already explained you. They are built-in and user-defined environment variables. So we using this environment variable, we can suppose we are defining a value of an environment variable in a particular action. We can reuse this value in some other action. So in this way, the actions communicate with each other through environment variable parameters. And we also know about we have some idea about test action parameters. Test action parameters are basically every action is as input and output parameters. That is, every action can be supplied with input parameters, and we can also provide output parameters to the actions. We'll see how. So we have both test parameters as well as action parameters. We begin with test parameters. Now I'll show you the navigation for test parameters. You have to go to files, settings, parameters, and then when you click on the plus symbol, you can give a name to your parameter. So say for example, this test takes the input value as a login ID. So I can write user ID, and this is the type. I can change the type since user ID is a string, so I'll keep the default type. The default value can be any name. Say for example Tom, and in the similar way you can also define the output parameters. I'll click on apply and OK. So for this particular test I have the value saved, so I can use it across different actions in this test. Now how do I retrieve this value in my test? What I can do is I can save this value in a variable, that is str user ID equal to test arguments. So remember guys, test args and test arguments in round brackets. Inside the round brackets you have to give the variable name, that is user ID. By doing this, this statement will put the user ID in this variable str user ID, and we can just simply display So what happens when I run this script? So as you can see, Tom is displayed. So in this way you can define different input parameters to your test, and we can use it in the script in across different actions. So this is called as parameterizing your script. str user id is the parameter over here, which is supplied with different values. Now like we have the parameterization of test, we also have parameterization of actions. I'll show you the navigation for parameterization of actions. You have to go to edit, action properties, and in action properties there's a tab called parameters. Again, like test parameters, we can give input and output parameters to our actions. So this will be specific to particular action. So say for example, for action 1 I am giving user ID. This time I'll give Jim, and I'll click on OK. Now let's see what happens when I run this test. Now if you see, it is still displaying Tom. This is because we have used test arguments. Now this test args is only for test, but if you want to retrieve the action parameter, we have some other name. We have to simply write parameter. So it will work, this code will work similarly to test args. Only difference is this is specific. This code works for the action parameters, whereas test args works for test parameters. So when I run this, you can see Jim is displayed. Now the difference between test arguments and action arguments are test arguments can be used across different actions in your test. Currently there is only one action, whereas action parameters are local to the particular action. So the user ID parameter can be used only within this action and not in some other action. So in this way we can parameterize the test and the action parameters, and we can use it in our tests.